Previously on Reading in Church and Other Distractions.
That was a remarkable paper.
Well, we have more time. We'll have to talk.
But in which you created a joke that was absolute art. And
you were in the back of the room with popcorn. This is at a official grown-up professional scholars meeting.
So we're supposed to be professional grown-up scholars. And probably the only reason I attended this session was because I knew that you had a joke come to you in the shower that you said, I have to work in this paper.
And you were live tweeting it.
Oh, it was amazing. The best part of it was the characters that you had created as caricatures in your joke were presenting right in front of you at this meeting. That was the best part.
That's true. That's true.
Person was supposed to.
And it had the line. It had John, the disciple, saying.
It had John saying.
No, John
Peter.
saying.
John saying to Peter, "Who died and made you pope." That was the big punchline.
Oh
So you can imagine the. Now, I think that's fairly obvious. I think they don't need any more detail than that on our podcast.
I think you get the picture.
I think it's a picture of who we are. I don't know that they get the joke.
Sometimes I have to remind myself, that really happened? Welcome to Reading in Church and Other Distractions with Rob and Mike. This week's episode, it's a plunderful life, Isthmus-time at Corinth. I don't think that's a deal breaker whether we're ready or not.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable? You feel good? You feel all right?
This. I can check on it.
It's gone now.
I have a screensaver.
I'm sorry, I just went back to that Far Side episode. My God, the fuel light's on, Jim. The fuel light. Oh no, wait, that's just the intercom light. Never mind. Oh my God, the sound is gone. No, wait, we're fine.
Oh, do we need something time-wise since that's not working now?
I've got my watch.
Okay.
Ish.
All right. Got a watch.
Right.
Cool. All right.
Ready?
Okay. You knew previously on?
No, I don't need to do that. So. Well, welcome back to the podcast. We are...
Are you talking to me or?
I am. I am speaking to you.
People.
Since you're the only one here.
All the ships at sea.
And all... Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea. This has taken a weird turn early, hasn't it? I mean, normally we can at least get into this thing.
That's about the sound quality we have sometimes.
Well, I am
okay.
Robert Wallace.
And I am Michael McKeever.
And we are still doing this, which is exciting.
Wow.
We hope you're still listening.
I know.
Because we've enjoyed doing this very much.
Give us a sign somehow.
So, this is the third... Is this the third week of Epiphany that we're doing?
Third week of Epiphany.
Okay, so Isaiah 9 and Psalm 27, Matthew 4, and 1 Corinthians 1.
That's what I have also.
Well, good, because this is going to be a really awkward...
It's not always the case.
Yes, where we have competing scriptures. Oh, yeah? Well, I see your Isaiah and raise you a Micah.
And Ezekiel, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
A wild card.
Well, great. Well, I hope that this new year is going to be going well for everyone. Technically, the new church year has already started.
That's right. We're recording this in mid-November, so I'm still thinking about Christmas. I'm still thinking about Advent, and I'm realizing I can't get my head into Epiphany.
Epiphany is here.
Whatever that means.
Happy Epiphany!
Get your head in Epiphany.
Get your head around Epiphany.
Get your Epiphany face on.
I wouldn't mind an Epiphany. That would be nice. A sudden realization. That would be great.
I wonder what that means.
Manifest. God manifest.
All right. You know what else I'm thinking about?
What's that?
Barbecue.
Really?
Because we're about to go to Texas.
We are about to go to Texas.
Get some barbecue.
It's going to be yummy. And steaks.
I'll just get that out there.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
All
right. Well, you want to start with scripture now that we've wandered around?
Yeah.
We wandered around long enough?
Yeah, we've tagged all the bases.
Okay,
all right,
good.
So Isaiah, third week of Epiphany, Isaiah 9, 1 through 4. You thought I was going to read third Isaiah.
I did think you were going to read third Isaiah. You had me going there.
I'm not going to do that. All right. Isaiah 9, 1 through 4. But there will be no gloom for those who were in anguish. In the former time he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the latter time he will make glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of darkness, on them light has shined. You have multiplied the nation, you have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as people exult when dividing plunder. I'll have to just take that by faith. The latter part. For the yoke of their burden and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. Mm-hmm. What's the day of Midian?
I don't know what the day of Midian is. Okay. Also, Zebulun and Naphtali are tricky too. So, I mean, I assume that's a victory against the Midianites, probably back in the book of Numbers.
Okay.
That's probably the reference we're talking I was about to say if that would make sense because it has wilderness imagery, but it's actually the Psalm today that has some more wilderness imagery.
Right. And Zebulun and Naphtali
Are northern tribes.
Okay, around the northern edge of Sea of Galilee, northwestern or both sides.
Northeastern, I think.
Oh, okay.
Well, now you've got me. I need a map. I'm gesturing. Does that help?
Is
the gesturing coming up
here?
The
way of the sea makes me think of the valley, the Megiddo,
right, the
break
pass through the Carmel Mountains.
Pass.
There's three different passes. There were three different passes through the Mount Carmel, the Carmel Mountains, and the Megiddo is one of the famous one there in the middle, and there was a northern and a southern pass as well. So I'm assuming the road that ran along the Sharon Plain and such down the coastline is the way. I don't know which sea we're referring to here. Yeah. Is this Mediterranean? Is this Galilee Lake?
That's what I wasn't sure of.
No, I don't know for sure either on that. Yeah. So, but we get some happiness here, which is nice because we just had some sadness. I mean, it was dark in 8. Yeah, we were closing in 8. There's darkness. We've seen that the king is not going to do what God wants. That's back in Isaiah 7, actually.
Right.
In Isaiah 7, Ahaz has decided not to put the Lord to the test because he's basically saying, I'm not planning on doing what God says anyway. And so Isaiah says, God himself will give you a sign. And we get the sign of Emmanuel, and we get the sign of Mahar-Shalal-Hashbaz, which is so much fun to say in Isaiah 8. And then at the end of that, you have the sense of darkness because of Ahaz's appeal to Assyria, because that's basically what's happening here. Is you have this group of kings that are wanting to form a coalition, of the willing to fight against Assyria, because you're never going to beat Assyria by yourself. Right. They are the big bad superpower, massive military, massive economics, massive group of people that can march across the Levant, and really the big Iron Age empire at the beginning of pretty much the whole time we have a monarchy in Israel.
You're like the sports equivalent of the Cubs.
Right, like the dynasty that the Cubs is.
That's just beginning now.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. The parallels are almost direct.
The dawn.
But then you have these small market small market countries that are trying to fight this juggernaut, and so they realize they can't take them on. So that the idea is they're gonna join together. They're gonna have Israel. You're gonna have Aram. You're gonna have all these other nations come together, and they try to talk Judah into it. Judah doesn't want any part of it. Instead, the king of Judah decides he's going to tattletale on these other kings to the king of Assyria and become a loyal vassal of the Assyrian Empire. And so Isaiah warned him. Isaiah said, don't do anything. Just trust God. You do your wallpaper impersonation. Let other people fight against the Assyrians. God will take care of you. But that, first of all, that would be hard. I mean, you've got people who used to be your allies wanting to destroy you because you won't fight with them.
Did they have wallpaper back then?
I don't know if they had stucco, maybe. Do your stucco
impersonation. An anachronism there.
The Assyrians are bearing down, and you have to face them. And so the king felt like, well, I got to pick two teams. Isaiah's saying pick God. He's saying, I'm going to pick the Assyrians. So he appeals to the Assyrians. He accepts Assyrian control, which means part of the gross national product now has to go to the Assyrians. They accept some Assyrian sanction in religious groups. I mean, it really is, and I think what we see, this hope passage here, where we've switched from a message of darkness to, but those wandering in darkness now have seen a great light. There is hope. And you get the yoke of their burden, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. I think that is that Assyrian illusion. Okay. That the first people to hear this are going to hear this as, oh, okay, we're going to be released from this terrible situation that the king has placed us in, and there is going to be actually.
But enough about the election,
right? Right after this verse 5 has holy war imagery in it. It actually has the burning of clothes, the burning of the spoils, the plunder that's been divided up. That God is going to do the fighting. It's not, we don't have to trust in our army. We don't have to trust in our military. We don't have to join with these other countries. God is going to throw the yoke off, and we can pass it on. So it really is this, God is big.
Their life is so different. I mean, because I hardly ever say like Thanksgiving or when plunder, when we
divide up the plunder.
When we mugged that guy. Got all that stuff. It's not part of my life.
That's right.
Warfare.
Dividing up the plunder is not.
Conquering and dividing the plunder. It's like, it's like something. It's
like
so
that.
common that you allude to it when talking about something else.
That's true.
And then there's no lions either in my life.
Well, it's like the reminder of that I always tell the students, right? That sometimes the Bible feels very close, like it's speaking right to you,
right.
And then sometimes it feels very far. And this is one of those times when it feels very far. Like the joy you have when you harvest or when you divide up plunder. Like plunder. That kind of joy.
Yeah.
Kind of joy.
Like we talk about burning the clothes and stuff later in the chapter.
Sure. Now I'm tracking.
Good times.
Now I'm tracking.
Look it up. You'll find that under the definition for good times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dividing the plunder.
So it is. It's this. The prophets are trying to always run that line between criticizing and energizing. I mean, they are not just being critical. They also are. I think the way I best explain it is the prophets are cursed with this ability to see what is and what could be. And that's truly a curse, to see what is possible and at the same time to see what is. Okay. The frustration that must bring out. I mean, I always tell the students it's the same thing that we have as professors, right? Because we see what they're capable of. I wasn't sure if you were going to say professor or parent. Professor or parent, right? Yeah. We see what they're capable of and we see what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and on all of, I think, prophetic speech comes from that place and comes from a place of you're not, living up to the vision that God had for you, which is the criticizing part. And then the energizing part of, and this is the vision God has for you. This is what's possible if you can hold on and try. So I think we've just come off of the darkness you have brought on us. Oh my gosh, what are you doing to? But the people who've walked in darkness have seen a great light. Right. This is still,
or coaches have walked that line. Yeah,
that's true.
Don't they? Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, coaches
and probably have more latitude than professors or parents.
Well, they have more authority. I think they have the currency, don't they?
The coaches I've known. Students let them criticize more. They're open to correction, even more than professors, more than parents, more than pastors often.
Yeah, that's
it's amazing the influence they have in people's lives. I didn't know we were going to go down this road, but
so you're exactly right, because normally if we will critique a paper or we critique, we get pushback. Yeah. Right, but when a coach says,
because you're motivated to be on the team, to do your best. Yeah. You're thinking about doing your best. That's why you're there.
It's an issue of trust at that point too. So that I think is a prophetic vision, to see what is and what could be, and the frustration that comes from that.
Walking that balance.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And when are you doing? I think of somebody like Ezekiel, who spends all of his time criticizing, and the minute Jerusalem falls, switches immediately to energizing. There is no strutting. Right. There is no told you people. It is, he goes immediately from, okay, try to warn you, to energizing.
What's the halftime talk going to be? What's it going to be about? Plunder.
Plus dividing the plunder. That's what we're going to be doing.
Energize these guys.
Yeah. So plunder's shares. So.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's Isaiah. And of course, it's always used as it's also messianic now, right?
Well, it shows up in Matthew, right? We're going to quote it in Matthew in a minute. Psalm 27.
Can I complain about what the lectionary has done?
Yeah.
Because it's done two things that are irritating to me. Right.
You want to complain now, or
can I complain early? Let me complain early, because you'll hide my complaint by your reading of this. It's Psalm 27 verses 1 and verses 4 through 9. So my first complaint is we've left out verses 2 and 3, which that's not nice.
Yeah.
And then
not that in the long.
On top of that, this psalm is an unusual psalm in that it divides really neatly into two bits. In fact, for years, people have suggested that Psalm 27 is actually two psalms stuck together. It's verses 1 through 6 and then 7 to the end. Yeah. So what has happened now is not only are we leaving out verses 2 and 3, but we've stopped in the middle of the second half of the second part of the psalm. Which
we have something like that.
As Corinthians. Really? Corinthians do that?
Well, no, but we're going to... It's funny how they break it up.
As a canonical scholar, that just irritates me.
I'm going to give you latitude to tell us what's missing here.
No, that's all right. No? I can talk about what's here. That's fine. That's okay. I'll be all right.
I might be curious.
I'm a team player.
Okay. Well, I might need... Well.
Go ahead.
Okay. Psalm 27, verses 1 and 4 through 9. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? One thing I asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. For he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent. He will set me high on a rock. Now my head is lifted up above my enemies all around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry aloud. Be gracious to me and answer me. Come, my heart says, seek his face. Your face, Lord, do I seek. A little bit of Yoda there. Okay, do not, I can finish this. I can do this. Stay focused. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help. Do not cast me off. Do not forsake me, O God of my salvation.
Do you want to...
What verses are missing there, and what do they talk about?
Let's talk about what's not here,
okay.
if we will. Well, one thing that's fascinating is we leave off the word of trust, because the second half is very much a lament, and the laments always have a word of trust in them. I mean, that's one of the neat parts. I mean, over half of the Psalms in the Old Testament have these lament features to them. And in all the cases, except one that is not actually in the lectionary, so we won't get to talk about, Psalm 88. But in all of the laments, there is this moment where the psalmist says, but I know God has heard me, but God is my trust, but God is my salvation. So even in this, don't forsake me, don't turn your back on me, God, there's always this moment of trust. They leave off that.
Yeah.
Right? They stop in this case with an imploring, which... that's fascinating. I don't know why you do it that way. I mean, it would seem like you finish at 6.
Yeah, where you stop it. Well, I always ask the question when Jesus is quoting Psalm 22 on the cross.
Yes.
Do we infer
my
that
God,
it ends in the statement of trust?
It does end in a statement of trust.
And so, should we understand? I mean, there's lots of big theological pillars set on the fact that they don't say that.
That's correct.
So I said, I think probably you could presuppose the larger psalm. So I don't know.
Could you?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Sometimes it's very precise, like Jesus stops in the middle of a verse and rolls up a scroll.
Right, and he's done.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ponder those.
That's a good question. I don't.
Yeah.
I tend to think that you don't infer the rest of the psalm when I do it.
Right.
But I'm not a New Testament guy. I'm an Old Testament guy.
People bet a lot on their inferences. So
they do.
And,
They do. So, I mean, I would have thought this would be a natural read 1 to 6. And then sometime later, you can read 7 through, I think it's 10 or 12 at the end of this. And
well, you can do that when you have a podcast on what the Bible says.
That's true. This is about the lectionary. You got me there. You got me there. There's a neat little turn of phrase at the beginning. There's a pun or a play on words on light and fear. My light, Ori, whom shall I fear, Iri, which is kind of a neat little play. You have a lot of... God's house language here, right? House of the Lord, the temple, his sanctuary, his tent, the cover of his tent. And I like, he will hide me in his shelter, which is Sukkah, which is just the holiday of tabernacles or booths.
Sukkot.
There, yes, Sukkot, that we have there. So he's hiding me in his Sukkot. So when I see that and hear about the cover of his tent, that immediately brings up wilderness wandering.
Right.
That's what that holiday is remembering.
Yeah, and this is not set. I mean, this is all during the era of the temple.
Right, exactly. So we're calling to mind this. God is our complete provision, and we are in the wilderness, and we have no help apart from the divine.
Yeah.
And so we're in God's sukkah, his tent or his shelter, and he's in his tabernacle, and off we're wandering around,
right.
and he's providing for us.
Yeah. You don't start with whom shall I fear unless you actually are.
Right.
Whistling in the dark.
Unless there's reason to fear other things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fearing. Who's fearing? I'm not fearing.
Who brought up fearing? I'm not fearing. Yeah, no, he's afraid.
Clearly you're not fearing.
Right.
No,
Right.
You're very spiritual. And look at all the things you're saying.
Well, it reminds me of the guy who said that Chip Kelly came out this week and said, well, the one thing I'm not going to be doing is coaching in college next year. And everyone said, well, the one thing now we know for certain is he'll be coaching in college next year. Yeah. Whom shall I fear?
Let me just process some of this stuff verbally.
I'm not afraid of anything. Well, the one thing we're certain of is he's afraid of something.
We have friends and colleagues like this, right?
We do,
this
actually.
This guy verbally processes.
Processing out loud. Exactly. So here...
Sometimes wandering.
I find it fascinating that we go back to this image of wilderness in verse 5 that is this time when they're so exposed.
Yeah.
Right? There's no food. There's no water. There's nothing apart from God's provision. And it's amazing to it's in, I believe, Jeremiah 2.
Lions, swamp jackals.
Swamp jackals,
all kinds of
bears,
stuff.
who knows what else is out there. When God in Jeremiah 2 says, boy, things were just so good in the wilderness.
Yes.
And I just think, did God not read Numbers?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, did he just leave that part out? Because, but that image of God thinking, you had to rely on me, right? There was this total reliance.
Things were simpler back there.
It was easier.
They're barely existing.
So you have that image here, which I really like, that image there. And
isn't that a paradox, though, when you do sense the provision when you really need
the provision,
when you're really
without question,
calling out for it. And those are special times.
I've talked many times about with students when I was in my grad program, and you know what it's like. We were working 7 jobs between us and couldn't pay the rent, and things were incredibly tight, and it was the most difficult financial time I think we've ever had as a family.
Right.
And I don't know I ever felt closer and more dependent on God than that time in so many ways.
Right.
So I love Proverbs. I think it's Proverbs 38, where that I often wonder if Jesus is not alluding to it in the Lord's Prayer. When in Proverbs it says, "Give me enough bread for today, because if I don't have any, I might steal and profane you. But if I have too much, I might forget you're my God. Right. So get me through today." Which is not a prayer that any of us really want to pray. We would like God to send us, enough for lots and lots to
daily bread.
But God says daily bread. Yeah. Manna only comes on a daily basis, which is a very frustrating thing. Yeah. Anyway, come, my heart says, seek his face. Another reminder that, remember, heart is the seat of reason more than emotion. So he's talking himself into this. And I do think it's fascinating that you have 4 questions for God, right? Don't hide your face. Don't turn your servant away. Don't cast me off. Don't forsake me. And 2 statements of confidence. You're my help and you're my salvation. Right. And it's not it's not in the abstract here. God is my help. God is my salvation. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't think about it just this moment. I think that help is S3 there. Do you have a Hebrew Bible that I could grab quickly as we talk about this?
I have one over...
Does the New Testament guy have a Hebrew Bible?
The second, right there. Next to Philo.
That's where everyone keeps their Hebrew Bible, is next to Philo, of course. Now, I'm fascinated by that because that word for help is a word that is used in Genesis, if it is the word that I think it is. Salvation. Yeah, it is. Atzriti. That is a word that's used of Eve.
Oh? Okay.
Yeah, when Eve is the helper. God here.
And usually when they talk about Eve, they say that's what the word used for God.
Right. Well, do they really? I've never heard anyone.
I've heard that,
I haven't been around many people
who are pro-Eve people.
Pro-Eve people say that's a word used for... It is a word used for God. Exactly. See, I'm fighting against the people who say...
Well, it's not a hierarchical term.
Exactly. Yes. That's the thing. I'm fighting against people who see it as a hierarchical term. And it's not. Right. God has been my help, and God is my salvation, and that is, so 4 times, don't turn me away, don't hide your face, don't cast me off, don't forsake me. You're my help, you're my salvation.
It's pretty concrete, and it's more like God is the ground of being, or philosophical.
It really.
So if anything's going to get you through a tough spot, it's going to be some abstract philosophy.
Right? No. This is real. This is my help and my salvation. Not, He's help. He's good. God, just cast your cares on God. No. He is mine, and very personal. I like that. That's just powerful to me.
Yeah. Even though he he is connecting with some communal ritual here in temple settings, institutions. It's very personal.
It is,
and he looks forward to it, and it's his desire.
Yes,
you know?
And for some reason, historically, this psalm has been understood by former critical scholars as being a royal image of one.
What is wrong with them?
I don't.
Don't get me started.
Those crazy form critics. No, I just
encountered that. Someone saying that. I didn't know what they were referring to.
I don't see it here. I mean, I don't see this, charge for the king here. Maybe it is. I mean, maybe,
unless it's all the references to temple and tabernacle institutions.
I don't see that centralized royal image. Do you?
Power. Not if you're evoking tabernacle and wandering.
Exactly. That can't be there. So no, I don't. And now, refuge, setting me on a high rock. Refuge is there's several biblical scholars who see that as the central message of the Psalter, is God as refuge.
Oh, okay. You're going to say the high rock.
Probably. No. Well, that's a good place to find it.
Okay.
Particularly when the rains come. But
because it's like, what are you talking about? The temple. Yeah, I mean the tabernacle. A high rock. What's the organizing principle here? A place of refuge.
Refuge, exactly.
Okay.
And God's beauty. We don't get that a lot. We don't get the beauty of the Lord. It's here in the text, but not as. We don't get that as common.
Which verse is that?
Verse 4.
Oh, okay.
And live in the house and behold the beauty of the Lord.
Yeah.
Because remember, tabernacle is, and we talked about that. Temple or tabernacle is a place of God's presence. Yeah. That image of presence.
Right. These are all images of presence.
Right. Which is why high on the rock gets you there too, as we talked about that, I think, in the first podcast, with mountains being. Images of presence.
Right. Huh.
So
living in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. So there's some very literal images of that in Luke. Anna, she never leaves the temple.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like, hey, we're closing up. You gotta
have to move along, lady.
I don't think they closed. Yeah,
the 24/7 for the temple.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe the courts at the temple.
Place to stay there. Is there a bench you could sleep on? Is that her bench?
Oh, there's enough acreage you could.
That's true. It was huge. Yeah. It was huge. Matthew. Yeah. Now when Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew to Galilee. He left Nazareth and made his home in Capernaum by the sea in the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali. What a remarkable coincidence.
Wow, the odds of that.
So that what had been spoken through the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, the road by the sea across the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and for those who sat in the region of shadow of death, light has dawned. From that time, Jesus began to proclaim, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near." As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets, and that sounds like Mark. Immediately they left their nets.
And they got their people nets.
And they changed those nets and got people nets. And said, "This should hold him." No, immediately they
Jesus taught them about metaphor.
And then Jesus taught them about metaphor. Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called to them. Immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, curing every disease and every sickness among the people. And making people leave.
Right. So same territory, right, from
Isaiah 9.
Mm-hmm. And I had to glance over and see, did he say Galilee of the nation? He says Galilee of the nations in this translation. Galilee of the Gentiles. Same thing.
Yeah, I wonder if it's Goy.
Yeah, what is it in Isaiah?
I'll look it up
look that up.
Now that I've got my Hebrew Bible handy.
Right. And so this is right after temptation.
Okay.
So he's coming
and baptism,
out of that.
Right?
Baptism
and
then
came right
temptation.
After that.
And I don't think we read the temptation.
No, I don't think we did.
We're a little bit fuzzy because it's been a couple weeks since we've done this. But so one of the first things he does here is call a community together. But it's also interesting, this language of the territory.
It is goyim.
Is it?
So it's nations, but that is a word usually that is thought of as referring to Gentiles.
Yeah, that's pretty much
So non-Jewish
how they
territories.
talk about it, yeah. And in Matthew, it's kind of ambiguous. Like, are the Gentiles positive or negative? And he seems to envision a mixed church, and they're often pointed to as both. They're kind of a stereotypical outsider or sinner, like some people are talked about, but then they sometimes will surprise you. And
so, like Luke, they'd be usually decidedly positive, right? Gentiles.
Well, they're still interacting with a society beginning from a worldview that saw them as negative, outsiders.
Okay.
And so they're always surprising counterexamples when they show up.
Okay.
There's a little bit more of the conventional stereotypes in Matthew. So it's probably it's more entrenched Jewish worldview in Matthew and looking outward toward the reality of the day of Matthew, that it's a mixed congregation.
Okay.
Whereas Luke might be framed in terms of point of view starting from a Gentile perspective, who's familiar with the Jewish story, but wondering, how am I a part of this story? So it's a little bit different, because he's going to end going to all nations and make disciples of all nations.
Matthew.
So he's headed there. But it's a different route.
Yeah, so Luke is sort of from the outsider's perspective, breaking into the story in surprisingly positive ways. Yeah. Whereas in Matthew, they are decidedly negative usually, and then every now and then
it's more mixed. It's more like well, that's very negative. That's kind of, he just tossed up. It's not central to the story. He might use a negative Gentile image and metaphor, but often when they're central to the story, they're exemplary sort of people who respond to the message. Just like a centurion shows up a lot in the Gospels.
Yeah.
And that's not because they're good guys. It's got even centurions are repenting, these guys who harass us. Gotcha. These are the really powerful people in an occupying force. So when they show up, it's like, man, centurions must have been great. Those Roman centurions.
They really seem to know it.
No, that's not why they're there.
To have it together.
They're always surprising examples. Like, sinners, prostitutes, and even centurions are responding to this message.
What?
So, yeah. Yeah. I forget why I got on that. But, yes.
Galilee of the Gentiles.
Yeah, Galilee of the Gentiles. So he is heading toward a mission that's going to be encompassing and disposed toward Gentiles, even though there's some harsh things said along the way about Gentiles. But I think that's in view here. When it's actually there in view here, and it's not just toss-off phrase or something like that for a story that's about something else that's very positive. And there were Gentile cities around the edge of the Sea of Galilee, or the different names they used for it, the Sea of Tiberias and whatnot. And we don't even hear about those Gentile cities, Sepphoris, and Jesus would have, been adjacent to them. Probably it'd be difficult to avoid them entirely. May have had to work in some of those Roman-dominated cities. So it's interesting to think about that.
Okay.
When we were there, I was there not that long ago. So when I was in Israel, it was such a rushed experience.
It always seems.
I'm sure it is. But we were there for a political tour, but also a religious tour. And so it was almost didn't even sleep at night. Right. And so it was too rushed thing. So now it's like, I'm revisiting every time I just happen to read through a section. Oh, like all these scenes come flooding back. And as I'm on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee near Capernaum, I'm looking toward the Golan Heights, and I'm thinking about what is going on in Syria, you know, the unimaginable suffering, and that's what I connected with thinking about this. And as you were talking about the bad situation in that, in Israel's territory. In fact, this might have been part of Syrian territory, Roman Syria in Matthew's day. But that's good news,
Is the assumption he's withdrawing so that he doesn't get in trouble?
Well, because John has been imprisoned. Right. So he's come back to Galilee, but he's not. He's left Nazareth, and I don't know if that's narrated here because I didn't read it. But he's not relocating in Nazareth. He's relocating Capernaum. That seems to be his base of operations. And so that is kind of evoking the beginning of this dawn, the beginning of Jesus' ministry, an intentional movement away from Jerusalem for the time being. It might be danger and protection coming to the north, But the first thing he does is call disciples. And we don't hear that he's doing miracles. We don't really hear that specifically other than the summary. What's really the focus here is that he's calling people to follow him.
You know what, I'm going to go back for just a second, because as you were talking, I was just thinking about the Isaiah passage and how on the heels of this king making this terrible decision, this moment of hope breaks through, and the people who are walking in darkness have seen a great light. And on the heels of this king making this terrible decision and arresting John, the people now are going to experience this great light. And it really is an interesting intertext there with the darkness of the end of 8, the darkness of John's arrest, and then the light that comes because God is doing something new. Here, God is doing something new. The light has come to these people. That just occurred to me as you were talking.
Yeah, and so it's John has been arrested because he's preaching this message of repentance and this coming change of the powers. And so Jesus runs away on the one hand. On the other hand, he starts preaching that message.
That exact message, yes.
It's like, oh, that's good and bad. That's a mixed bag.
If I stay here, I could get arrested. I'm going to go over there and preach this message.
Yeah. Change my geography. Maybe that's the issue.
Maybe that's what John's problem was.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's interesting. When we were there, we were at this. I know we spent a fair amount of time in Nazareth because we were at a conference on peace. You know, that tumultuous situation.
Never going to catch on.
Yeah, but it was interesting, and then we spent some time around Galilee, and we kind of were mentally preparing ourselves for going down to Jerusalem. And they were saying, you know, things are a lot more intense down there. Up in Nazareth, people really do get along much better than they do the further south you go.
That's true.
I mean, in retrospect, I know that, but I didn't really realize. You know, it's like, man, this is so intense when you get down to Jerusalem. And I guess it's perennially
some
that
things
way.
Haven't changed.
That's you get to the center. You can say things up in Galilee, up in the sticks. You can get away with things, but you go down to the center, the center of everything, and you do things in the temple, you're not going to get away with it.
You're not going to get away with it.
Jesus didn't get away with it. Yeah. So this is a good news for Galilee, not so good news for John. And he calls 2 brothers, Simon, who is called Peter.
Now we're skipping ahead there, right? I mean, he's not called Peter yet.
Yeah, not yet. So this is the way,
Oh, that's Simon.
Yeah, this is the way narratives work, with sometimes engaging explicitly what you already know, and other times, but you're still going to hear the story about how that happened, right? Okay. The rock. And Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. So they are not destitute people. They're probably not middle class either, but they are people of means, and they leave those immediately. I mean, that's hard for us to do in a very hyper-individualized society. What does that mean? What kind of disruption does it cause personally for them, and also for these networks, these social networks? Jesus may not have been popular asking for that kind of demand. I mean, the families, he's talking about dividing households and people to being split. It's like, well, they feel that if an individual up and leaves, and not everyone's on board with that. So doesn't seem to be any hesitation here. Casting a net, and he says, follow me, and I will make you fish for people. Now, is there an image in the prophets? I can't remember where it is. Isn't there an image in the prophets of a hook, putting a hook in the mouth of people? Is that in Ezekiel?
I don't know the reference specifically, but it wouldn't be unusual. In that case, it would be a decidedly negative thing, because that was one of the things the Assyrians would do.
Okay, right.
That would be a way they could lead you off into captivity, is to put a hook in your mouth.
Maybe I am thinking of that from Ezekiel.
Further humiliate you, or the Babylonians in the case of Ezekiel, because they learned their lessons from the Assyrians. I mean, these major national superpowers, they weaponize terror and do everything they can to be as cruel as possible and record it so that you would be afraid to disobey. And so I don't doubt that it is there. If it is, it's probably a very negative image in its conversation, that you would lead the people off that way. So. Yeah,
and I'm looking it up in Greek while you're talking to see if this says, and I forget whether it's in this gospel, but it's something about catching them alive, catching people alive. So it's a positive image here. I've thought people might have been alluding to a positive image in the prophets, or a prophet saying that's the nature. He's alluding maybe to that negative thing, but saying that somehow speaks to his role, his call as being a prophet.
Transforming it.
Yeah. So there's something positive about catching people. I might be reading Luke into this.
I mean, although that said, that is an image of the Assyrians taking you away from home, taking you away from family, taking you away from culture. I mean, so on some levels, that's kind of what you were describing a second ago. Of, leaving this disruption.
Mm-hmm.
Creating this disruption, I should say, leaving this family.
Well, and authority. I mean, this is unusual.
That's right.
That someone calls someone else. Usually, someone would approach a teacher if he's just a rabbi, which he's not, evidently. And this is immediate. And there's occasions throughout the Gospels where the immediacy is what's emphasized. When he's turning toward Jerusalem, he's calling people, and they say, "Well, let me go say goodbye to my father. Let me bury my father," which might mean my father's dead. And we're having a funeral this afternoon, or let me wait till he dies, probably. Because everyone knows that's where your primary allegiance is, right?
Right.
In a filial piety in a patriarchal society, but Jesus says no. Even though Elijah allowed Elisha to go back and do that,
wrap up things.
This is someone greater than that. So
and we specifically get the father mentioned in 22, right? They leave the boat and their father,
right?
You don't get that with Andrew, but you do get that with James and John.
Yeah, this is the thing that's being left. Immediately left their nets and followed him. And as he went from there, he saw two brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and the brother John, in their boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. And immediately left their boat and their father and followed him. So that's not casual, I don't think.
No.
The mention of leaving
twice. His father is mentioned in that passage.
That's in this very concise narrative mode that is biblical literature. Once is like you got to pay attention to one thing, but twice is. It's
James, the son of Zebedee, in the boat with their father Zebedee. They left the boat and their father. I mean, he occurs in that story.
Did I mention they left their father?
Yeah,
it's like someone going out of their way.
3 times his name occurs there, or twice his name occurs and twice father occurs.
That's the big thing to leave right there. Yeah. I mean, that's what that all society is built around, your father. You know? And this guy can command allegiance and has authority. So rather than starting with miracles of a natural sort, a spiritual sort, he starts with this sort of authority showing up.
Is that what's being heard here? I mean, the early audience, they read this, they're saying, "Holy cow!"
Yeah, I think so.
Here's a guy who has no formal education that we know of, and he wanders out of the wilderness and walks up here and tells people to leave, and they go. So they're hearing.
This is a formidable person. In fact, this is guys off the charts. There's no one like this. No one does this.
We've never seen anyone with that kind of
who does this
charisma.
Yeah. Yes, that's what it is. He's very, very charismatic personality.
Jesus boy, everybody loved him.
Yeah, and the immediacy of this, so the allegiance of this, and so that is one of the qualifications. Being with Jesus from the beginning is one of the qualifications for being one of those apostles. Yeah, and the thing is, they don't figure that prominently in the story. Usually when they show up, they're blowing it. They're a counterexample.
Right.
So being with Jesus is significant. I mean, that's just in and of itself. They've spent time with Jesus, and you might think like, oh, these are going to be main characters in the story. It's like, well, not so much.
No.
Not so
we
much.
even get their names, right? Anytime you get someone's name in a story, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And we still don't know.
And now, someone like Luke's going to write another volume, and they are going to be the main characters. They're going to drive the plot, but not so much here. They're with Jesus, and they're observing, and they're probably scratching their heads. And what did I leave this for? Oh, man.
There's no 401k here. This is a bad idea.
And Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness among the people. Matthew pushes the miracles.
I was going to say, he's burying the lead here, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's going to put him. He's not going to actually do it. This is a summary of that. He's not going to actually focus on that until after the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, so that's just let you know what's important to Matthew. Jesus is a teacher. Okay, Jesus has authority, and he's one who's gathering.
He is an authoritative teacher.
He's a rabbi.
Oh,
who's
and he can do
disciples.
some miracles. But that's not the point.
Yeah, right. But did you hear this sermon, man?
Yeah,
you got to get that. Got to get that podcast. That's an interesting thing. That's a little bit different than probably a little bit different than Mark or Luke.
Yeah.
It's not as much the miracles, but it's the authority, and then as we're leading into the teaching, he's gathering a community, repentance, and a recognition that the kingdom was broken in some fashion, maybe not in its fullness, not in an expected way. but that demands a response and a gathering together of a community. And then Sermon on the Mount is the charter for that community.
How do you translate "Kingdom of Heaven has come near"?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier in another podcast, and it is when you read biblical references, they're always reading theology into linguistics. Okay, they're reading this magic language of the Bible, which is Greek. It's not. It's like other languages, but it has all this freighted history that we have with it. One way to talk about it is that it has broken in, or it showed up early.
Okay.
And yet another aspect, it might be helpful if I knew other ways to talk about things that have arrived, and maybe that was what some of the scholars I've looked at are alluding to. But it could be that something that's here and is emerging in its fullness. It hasn't emerged in its fullness. That's how someone has characterized it. And I think I need to take that into account, because Jesus spends all his time talking about that mysterious, growing, hidden, dynamic aspect of the kingdom. So he talks about seeds and leaven.
Did you say blossom?
Blossoming.
Okay, the kingdom of heaven is blossoming.
Is beginning to blossom forth. Yeah.
Because then you've got an image of it's here and it's starting. It's not full, but it's sort of growing into its fullness.
Yeah.
Kind of idea.
And often it is in the miraculous, the startling miracles are a background for him to talk about this. The observable becomes the background for talking about this unobservable dimension of the kingdom, which is not fully here yet, which is growing, but as an unobservable reality that's going to have huge, whoops, I said that, kind of a harvest in the end, like a tiny seed, a mustard seed, which goes into a great tree, which all the birds of the heavens, live in, which is another image of Gentiles, right?
Yeah, write that down. That's
good stuff. Yeah, that's good. It's kind of like, I might be quoting someone.
Oh, okay.
It might not be original.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. You should tell parables, man. You're good.
Man, you can do that. You want to do 1 Corinthians?
Yeah.
Let's jump there. 1 Corinthians 1:10 through 18. Now I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you be in agreement, and that there be no divisions among you. Speaking of things that are never going to work. No, but that you be united in the same mind.
Divisions? Who mentioned divisions? This is like the guy talking about fear. I wonder if there are divisions here.
For it has been reported to me by Chloe's people. Oh, man, Squealer's died in prison, Chloe. Come on. This reported to me by Chloe's people that there are quarrels among you.
That's not in all the manuscripts.
That is
about
not
the
all the manuscripts, sorry. Okay. That there are quarrels among you, my brothers and sisters. What I mean is that each of you says, I belong to Paul, or I belong to Apollos, or I belong to Cephas, or I belong to Christ. Has Christ been divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? I thank God that I baptized none of you except Crispus and Gaius, so that no one can say you were baptized in my name. I assume except Crispus and Gaius.
Yeah.
I did baptize also the household of Stephanus. Beyond that, I don't know whether
I baptized. It's a little digression here. Yeah, let me think.
Wait a minute. Crispus, Gaius, and maybe Stephanus. But that's it. That's all.
Do you want to leave that in the letter, Paul? Yeah, let's leave that.
Let's just leave that.
That's good stuff.
For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to proclaim the gospel, and not with eloquent wisdom, so that because he's simply demonstrating.
As you see clearly by verse 16, that is not why I'm here.
So that the cross of Christ might not be emptied in its power. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God.
Okay, so here at verse 18,
yes,
many people say, that's the beginning of a new section.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's what he's going to... it could be, a transitional verse, and we could certainly understand it that way, but that's where he's going from 18 on. He's going to talk about the foolishness of the cross. So is that a concluding thought? Is that the beginning of a new thought? So a lot of your Bibles, might make a
little heading there,
a little break there between 17 and 18. So
I don't like those breaks.
Yeah, for the message of the cross, that's a very natural way to begin a new topic, a new pericope or thought.
We wouldn't. But he just did, for Christ did not send me.
I
want to argue too much
always
on this,
it's always one of those a sign that points both ways. Based on this, I'm going to keep saying this, and it's obviously very fluid. You kind of need to know what's everything about that after that 18 is about the foolishness of the cross. Right. So the cross is mentioned, but then the foolishness of the cross becomes front and center. 18 following. But,
and the divisions come back, right? I mean, that's sort of what's...
The division is the number one problem at Corinth.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I heard someone once say that the Corinthian problem is they had division where they needed unity and unity where they needed division.
Okay, and where did they have unity then?
The spiritual gift thing. They wanted to say everybody needs to have the same spiritual gift.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, that's a nice aphorism.
Like, no. That's where we're supposed to be different.
Yeah.
We have different gifts. So we fight. No, that's where you're supposed to be the same.
Yeah. It sounds like a Python skit,
It kind of does.
That could really they could do a number on this. But this is what I always point my students back to when we look at the Lord's Supper as an example where Paul is going to use some sarcasm to the point of meaning the opposite. Because he'll say at introducing the Lord's Supper, he's saying one of those Corinthian air quotes, where he's quoting back their silly language to them, like how absurd this is. He says, of course there have to be divisions among you, or else the genuine, air quote, deep knee bend, the genuine wouldn't be made manifest. And so that's not in his thinking. He clearly means the opposite. It's like, there's no genuine and non-genuine Christians.
Right.
There's only Christians. There's no carnal and spiritual Christians. If you're a Christian, you're spiritual. You're a new creation. We take that language and use it differently. But he would never make those kind of... He clearly doesn't mean that later in the letter, because that's where he starts the letter.
Okay.
This is where he's getting into really what is the main issue at Corinth, and that is divisions that show up in all kinds of different ways. Although I like what you said about being unified in the things where there should be some diversity.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's division where there's supposed to be unity.
So he is at, let's see, where's he at? Ephesus? I think he's at Ephesus when he's writing this. He spent a long time at Corinth. He didn't spend a lot of time at a lot of churches. He spent 18 months there. You read about it in Acts 10 or 11. No, 18. Acts 18. He spent a good amount of time there. They know each other very well. And yet, when he leaves, they chase after other apostles. And
right.
It's a town that is kind of modern in the sense of they're interested in the new thing and what's sexy and what's
alpha consumers
cool.
Here. Is that what we got?
Yeah. And actually, people who chase after that sort of stuff may not have good self-esteem. Would be a modern way of talking about it. It's like they may not be as grounded as some other people. They might have moved to Corinth for like, I'm going to get rich. What's new? There's all this new stuff coming through Corinth.
It's a port city.
It's
right?
Two ports.
That's right.
This narrow landmass, which I always ask people for an extra point. What do we call a landmass between two large bodies of water?
An isthmus.
An isthmus, yes. And someone always whispers it. Did you say Christmas? Isthmus. So he was there a year and a half, so he was there for the Isthmus season, which is a wonderful time at Corinth. Yeah.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
I think I need to add a sound effect there when we go low. We take the low road, or a sad trombone or something. We'll find
the
that.
Isthmus season.
Yes.
I'm going to let that one sit for a moment if I can.
You marinate for a while. So that is that'll preach poorly. But that's not what we're about. We're about the cross. We're not about eloquence, right?
Or puns.
Puns. Yes. Anyway, this is problem number one, and which might be at the root of a lot of other problems there, and there might be a theological reason for that, and that is some are elitist. Some have this revelation which makes them genuine or distinct from others. They might separate off, and they might do all kinds of things because they have this revelation that I am like is promised in some Greek mystery religions. I am resurrected in my spirit. I'm perfect and complete, and I'm there. And it doesn't matter what I do with my body, right, as we talked about in another conversation.
Is the baptism conversation that he has? I mean, aside from being kind of funny to me, I thank God I baptized no one. Except Christmas.
Well, and then those are the exceptions.
And maybe Stephanus.
Yeah, let's put this in the parentheses. I can't remember if there
was anybody else. I can't remember. But that's not the point. The point is, no one can say they were baptized.
Help me out here, Sosthenes.
But is this the kind of thing that in the Gospels we were fighting against with John and Jesus, right? Where John has to keep saying, but one comes after me who's going to baptize you even greater. Or I'm not worthy to.
Well, that could be. Think about it. Baptism is an act of identification.
Mm-hmm.
And some churches, some Baptist churches, they make you have to be baptized in that church,
Yeah, that's right. It's membership.
And they may not know why entirely. I mean, they probably like, because the ancient ritual at the root of it is an act of identification. Well, they may not consciously, are they? You know these circles better than I do.
No, they wouldn't say it that
yeah,
way.
but it is an act of identification. So you could kind of misdirect that identification. Like, I was baptized by John, and I'm still a disciple of John.
Well, in some ways, my son had a hard time with this because he was baptized by our minister, and it wasn't long after he was baptized that the minister was caught in sexual indiscretion with the preschooler.
Okay.
And he had a hard time with this issue of, is my baptism okay? Like, do I need to get baptized again? And so kind of walking him through this, what baptism was, and thinking about
the community. Or I was baptized in this tradition. Right. Do I need to be rebaptized
into a new tradition? Exactly.
Like, no, you were baptized in the Christ.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I wondered as I was, I thank God I didn't baptize any of you, because I wouldn't have to have this problem. But except the people I baptized. But that's not the point.
And then Christ didn't send me to baptize. Well, like, we just alluded to the end of Matthew where he says, "Go into all nations, baptizing."
Yeah, exactly.
Like, well, there was that. Well, Stephanus and all nations, but otherwise,
this has become the Spanish Inquisition sketch.
Yeah, it's where's your focus here? And the focus is into,
And then he goes with it, not to proclaim an eloquent wisdom.
Yeah,
obviously.
Right, clearly,
as I've wandered around a bit on that whole baptism issue.
Good save, Paul. So, but it's a misunderstanding of baptism or a misfocused identification. And I belong to Paul, or I belong to Apollos, and I belong to or I belong to Christ. Right? There's always the topper.
Right? Christ baptized me.
Well, I come back like an argument with the little kid. Infinity. There's no
Jesus.
You win. You win. Or this is the super spiritual people. I don't know exactly sure what that means. What is that person? How is that analogous to the others? That might be what he's directing them to. But clearly, this is a misunderstanding of what that means if it's separating off from the others, right?
Right.
And Apollos is one who comes in later and is eloquent.
How much do we know about Apollos other than what we have in the text?
Other than Acts.
I was going to say Acts is it, right? Where you find him, he's a disciple of John the Baptist.
I think it's Acts 19 and 20. And he's he's a powerful disciple of John, and Priscilla and Aquila instruct him more fully. Okay. And then he's really powerful and eloquent. And the thing is, at Corinth, if it's like incipient Gnosticism, like the first Christian heresy.
Spiritualizing.
Yeah, that it's all about your spirit and it's about this revelation. Part of that, recent scholarship has kind of emphasized or discovered that part of that is that it's associated with wisdom, which is entangled in Greek thought with eloquence. And so if a person comes in who's very eloquent, they might be exactly the kind of person you would think would be communicating this sort of revelation, which is comes in that fashion through powerful teachers, eloquent teachers, of which evidently Paul is not.
Is not an eloquent teacher.
He's powerful, but not in words. Okay, and so that might be why he is then going to shift this discussion to. I didn't come in that fashion. I came, with foolishness. And if you're reading it through, what some people do, they read Acts into this. He's just in Acts. He leaves Athens and goes to Corinth. Mm-hmm. So at Athens, he's on Mars Hill and he's talking to philosophers. Right. And it's a very different approach. Mm-hmm. And he's the one who can go to the university and preach, and he can go to the other side of town and preach too. He can go to the other side of the tracks. Paul is an amazingly robust, multifaceted person. Well, some people read into that trajectory. It's like, well, that didn't work at Athens, so he's trying a new tack in Corinth. Have you ever heard this?
I have not.
Oh yes, this is out there. Okay, which hey, they're closely reading, or they're reading Acts.
That's something.
We put it that way.
Let's encourage that.
They're reading Acts. Maybe they're overly close, or they're drawing the wrong conclusions, but it's not because they say he wasn't successful in Athens, so he's going to try something else. Well, no, he was successful in Athens.
Yeah, he didn't plant a church there, though.
He didn't plant a church. It wasn't as successful, but it's not like, try something else, I guess.
Well, did they do the same thing with Jesus in John 3 and 4, right, where he talks to Nicodemus in John 4 and highly spiritual matters, and Nicodemus didn't work. I'll talk to the Samaritan woman and see if she
at
understood.
Noon. That didn't go well at night.
Let's try at noon and talk about water.
No doubt.
Well, being born again, that was too high. That didn't work.
Someone might read it that way.
Jesus is taking a different approach.
Yeah. Well, those are two scenes that are clearly meant to be read contrasting each other.
I would hope, yes.
But this is not the same sort of thing. It's not as though...
Well, you could argue it is. I mean, I think that's what you're saying, right? That he's speaking in Athens in a way that's different than he's speaking in Corinth, but in a way that shows he's got range. Not in a way that shows
not like
that
he's just trying this out. Let's see if this works.
Maybe this works.
Yeah.
I've got my new missions book. It says sometimes...
Yeah. No, it's not as though he's changing his message for...
his audience.
Because of what's happened in Athens. He's changing his... Because of the problems.
Right.
At Corinth, and one of those is the shamefulness and foolishness and weakness of the cross. All those are the opposite of what people at Corinth are seeking: honor and power and status, and also.
So when he says, "I came not with eloquent wisdom, so the cross might not be named in power." That is a direct attack on what they're valuing and a promotion of what he's trying to say.
Right.
And that's in that verse. Mm-hmm. So I'm not coming with eloquent wisdom because that's the last thing we need.
Except when you read his letters, you realize, he can be eloquent.
Yeah.
He goes into this even more in 2 Corinthians. It's like he says very sophisticated arguments about how talk pretty. It's like, I don't buy that. Yeah. But you don't do that for people who would be impressed by that or do that to impress people. Mm-hmm. So it's probably wrapped up in the Corinthian error that eloquence is also kind of part and parcel of this theology. Not that eloquence in and of itself in a heretical,
but that it's a sign of wisdom
for these people. That meant this other element that is kind of crept into his gospel. Which
you
he's
must
trying
be
to
spiritual.
correct.
God must be using you. Listen to how you sound.
Look at that, and look how you look. Look how tall you are.
God must.
Apollos is probably tall and eloquent.
He probably was good looking.
Yeah, wait, you wouldn't name him Apollos if he wasn't.
Everybody liked him. Don't you hate people like that everybody loves? I hate people like that.
Yeah. So this is the issue at Corinth, and he starts right off with these divisions and chasing after people, and even relativizing. I mean, baptism obviously is important and significant. But he's saying, this would be analogous to eloquence. Like, these aren't. Let's refocus. Okay, the corrective is going to say that we got to just you're misunderstanding this. What it's all about is the cross. And usually when he talks about the cross, he usually talks about cross and resurrection together. This is the one letter where he doesn't talk about them together. He waits to talk about resurrection at the end because they believe they are resurrected in their spirits. That's part of the Corinthian error. And so he is going to counter that and poke holes in that overinflated theology every chance he gets through the cross and the wisdom and the shamefulness of the cross, because that's the medicine they need.
I think it would be fun to poke holes in overinflated theology.
It is. They whistle around the room.
I'll do my own sound effects.
That's a sound effect we can put in later in post.
We'll fix it in the mix.
That's why it sounds so good.
Oh, wow. All right. There's no light here. I thought maybe we might have a light theme, but we didn't.
Nothing light here.
No.
It's like we're not even building toward Christmas.
No. Oh. This is good stuff. All right. Well, I hope that you have found something useful today, and we haven't enjoyed our podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.
Thanks for being in the conversation.
Blessings.